Hello John, here we have the Jezail rifle musket. Well, I say rifle, it's not rifled, and I'm filming it here from home, and I decided that as I record the progress of restoring this, I can keep you updated on it, and maybe even you can contact me back with some advice on things I propose to do with this item. Anyway, back down the muzzle end here, and we've got a splayed muzzle here. Apparently this is called a swamped muzzle, and as we were talking about, as we move down the barrel we can see the twist of the barrel showing its construction. So it's a steel twist barrel, and the twist, as we can see, continues all the way up to the breech, and just briefly includes just there, just along here, a little bit of decoration before we reach the sight, and then the tang, which appears to be welded into position somehow. It doesn't seem to be unscrewable. And then we have the percussion lock here with the nipple and the receiver. So this barrel, somebody went to some trouble making this barrel, and with these types of weapons we always have to ask ourselves, is this a fake? Because you'll see from this picture there's quite a lot of fakes around, but looking at the state of this, it makes you think that it's original, but you need to be absolutely certain. And I would say that the amount of work that's gone into making that barrel, when there are so many cheaper ways to make barrels, suggests that that is an original barrel, and we want to extrapolate how much of this is original as well. So let's look at it in a little bit more detail. So what we have here is a design known as a SIND buttstock. That's S-I-N-D, SIND. And what we have up here is a really interesting shape which is indicative of a particular type of Jezail weapon. Significant is the fact that there's brass here on the top, and then the sharp bend here. As you'll see from the picture I'm just about to show you, if you have a look at this, you'll see that it has a slot similar to the one here with this bent piece of brass here. You'll see that there's one of these for sale at Arundel Militaria. Have a look at the picture again. And you'll see that it's very, very similar. However, it is a matchlock piece, and that is the slot where the matchlock mechanism, the arm that held, with the clamp at the end that held the match, used to come out of there and fire down into the pan at this position, and this would have had a pan cover originally. In addition to these features up here, you'll note that just down here there's a brass insert with a little slot here, which I assume was used for keeping percussion caps it shuts. It's quite a crude construction, but it makes sense to put it here because there would have been a hole here, because again, as you can see from the weapon in Arundel Militaria, the trigger is actually in this position here. And until I actually take the thing apart, take this lock plate out and take this cover off, I can't be absolutely certain, but I think that this is hollow through here and there's a mechanism inside here. And if you look at the following X-ray that I found, you can see that the mechanism is a series of bars running through. You can see in the X-ray that there's a trigger down here and a mechanism that runs up through and operates the system. So we can assume that there's a hollow inside here designed to accommodate that. The item measures quite short from all the other weapons I've seen of this type. This one's 114 centimeters long. The one at Arundel Antiques is 152 centimeters long, and there's nothing in the description to suggest that it's rifled, so it might well be smoothbore like this. So a matchlock of short length, maybe it was designed to function almost like a cavalry carbine rather than the rifled versions which were used for long distance shooting, for sniping so to speak. And a matchlock like this is dated, according to some of the history I can find, as early 19th century and dates from about 1801 to 1830. So it's a very, very early version of this type of weapon. So here we are closer in on some things that have happened later in life, and clearly if we accept that it was a matchlock, then it's undergone a conversion, and the latest conversion we've got here, because of the lock and the receiver for the hammer here with the nipple, is means a percussion lock has been fitted to this item. I have a theory though that in fact this is the second conversion that this item has undergone, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, you've got a really bad fitting around here, along the top here, and then you've got this nasty cutout here. If you look at the next picture, you'll find that this is an 1853 pattern Enfield musket lock plate for a percussion mechanism. But it looks as if, because of how badly fitted and the extra gaps, as if it was actually put in place of an earlier flintlock plate. And if you look at this picture here, you can see that something similar might have fitted, and that this gap here is to accommodate part of the pan for the previous lock mechanism. We've also got, looking at the mechanism here, evidence of a cutout for what must have been a trigger guard, quite a substantial one by the look of it. And I'll have to look into this a bit more, but the current version only has this metal plate here for housing the trigger, so I'm going to have to check if this comes from the Enfield pattern and what other flintlocks might have looked like, because this may have had originally a trigger guard assembly which subsequently couldn't have been used, or maybe because the shape of it didn't fit with this trigger, which meant there wasn't enough room to get your finger in the trigger there, and that this might be the trigger that goes with the 1853 lock plate. Here we see the brass cover, and that's the bit that slides. There's a gap inside there. I assume that that's where the original trigger used to come out. As we can see that in restoring this piece, a lot of it's banged together with nails. It's going to be really tricky to get some of these out. They might need to be grind the heads off or drill them out, so it's going to be tricky. And then when we come down the bottom of the barrel, we've got the split here. We've got 2 bands. Very often they got 6, 7 bands, but they're much longer normally. And the stock would normally go to the far end. This one's short. It's finished off quite nicely, so it might originally have been short, but again there's no way of telling. There's nothing to indicate on the barrel that it was covered with wood at any time. A ramrod will need to be made for it, and I have used a brass piece of threaded stud and put it down the barrel and checked, and the barrel is indeed not loaded. Actually, I've changed my mind, and I can now see that there is a brown mark that runs all the way along here, level to about this position, and probably indicates that this wooden stock here did originally continue along here. The damage here is going to need some kind of bracing in order to give it any strength. But the joy of having banding is that I can either use one of these bands or maybe even reproduce one which will cover that repair. That is an option. So in terms of repairing this, I could settle for maintaining a short stock and repairing that. My main concern is what to do here, because this is all really a mess, and somehow restoring that is the making of this. When we look at the sinned stock, it's rough and it's quite thin, but in fact this is characteristic of these things. So I could settle for keeping this, but it's what to do here. This is the big question. So what to do with this item? Well, from a cost position, these don't come up at very much money, sometimes only £200 or £300. The one at Arundel is £375, but by design it can lay claim to be a much earlier one and appears to be in good condition, although it has suffered something similar to the damage that this has had. The lower part of this is missing. So option 1 would be to just kind of glue the thing back together as best as is and hang it on a wall, and it'll be very pretty. Option 2 is to restore the item with a restoration of the lock and making a new hammer to fit, possibly making a trigger guard that could fit, treating the barrel to bring up the twist pattern in it. That is a quite involved process, but doesn't do the barrel any actual structural harm and could make a real feat. That would also involve making a new piece of wood. In looking at what might have been available, it's surprising to find that walnut was available in that part of the world, and I have no way of telling what this is made out of, so I may as well make it out as walnut as anything else. Walnut is available. The problem is it's American black walnut that tends to be available, and this would have been made out of a European walnut. Juglans is the Latin name, and so I should be able to source a piece of European walnut and make a new stock in the same mould, which would then mean I could cut the lock plate to fit precisely, get rid of that cutout, and repair this in the process and put it back as it was. That's option 2. Option 3, the most extreme and the most involved, would be a labour of love and wouldn't be done for the money. it would be done to make a nice piece. But I think I could do it so well that I could at least consider it a piece that could be in the future maybe mistaken for a very high quality original piece. That would involve redoing the stock and doing it in such a way that it was antiqued, making it without the lock plate in place and having it as original, so it would have been smooth here, it would have had no trigger here, it would have been smooth on the underside here, and it would have had a trigger here. Restore this completely, this top piece, and use that slot to have the match mechanism come down. Now that's okay, that bit. The problem bit is returning that to the pan for the priming powder that would be required for it to be, shall we say, authentic, at least correct technically. And I don't know how that's fitted in there. So that's the trick. So there's three options on this, and I'll give it some more thought, I'll do a bit more research, and I'll get back to you if there's any news. Bye for now.